Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 41 of Be With Me. Crazy passage today. It's only in Luke chapter 23. Remember where we left off? We left off with Pilate asking Jesus if he was the king of the Jews. And then Jesus basically answers him back, are you asking me from a personal perspective or are you asking me from your professional perspective? And we find Pilate near to the kingdom, but he fails to listen, fails to heal, fails to have this personal revelation of God. So he finds out that Herod's in town. So listen to what happens next. This is in Luke chapter 23, I'm going to start in verse 5. The Jews were urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all of Judea from Galilee, way in the north of Israel, to this place, Jerusalem, which is in southern Israel. When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean from the north of Israel. And when he had learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, now he's talking about Herod Antipas, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at this time. What a fortuitous thing, he thinks. So when Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. Who wouldn't want to see a miracle? So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him, and Herod with the soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day. Before this, they had been at enmity with each other. And then verse 15, just jumping down to, Pilate says, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving of death has been done by him. All right, so this is a very interesting thing today. We have Herod. It's not Herod the Great. Herod the Great was the one who killed all the boys less than 2 years old in Bethlehem after the wise men came by. He's the guy that killed his wife and several of his sons. I think he drowned them. I'm not positive about that. He was known as the Great Builder. He built the Masada. He helped rebuild the Jewish temple. He has a bunch of sons, 4 sons that survive. And at his death, which is in 4 BC, he gives and set them up for ruling. Herod Antipas, one of them, is the guy that we're talking about here today. He ruled for about 30 years, from 4 BC's 40 years to 39 AD, basically over Jesus' lifetime. And that tells you something, that the guy was a pretty good ruler, or maybe just as ruthless of his dad. All right, so Herod, we find, is glad to see Jesus. Now, he knew of Jesus, and he had actually threatened Jesus' life in Luke chapter 13. Jesus hears about this. Some Pharisees say to Jesus, you've got to look out. Herod's trying to kill you. And Jesus says to him, tell that old fox. I just love that. Tell the fox. And he says, if a prophet's going to die, it's not going to be up in Galilee. It's going to be in Jerusalem. That's where all the prophets die. So Herod, rightly so, wants to see a sign. Who of us wouldn't want to see a sign? Would be totally cool. He questions him at length, and Jesus, probably to Herod's great disappointment, doesn't engage in this and is silent. But then this is the cool part today. So one of the non-cool parts is he treats Jesus with contempt. He shows by his attitude or his manner of treatment that the entity has no merit or worth, just disdain. So that's what him and the soldiers do by mocking him and having contempt. The Jewish leaders continue to accuse him. But then this is the part that got me today. He arrayed him in special clothing and sent him back to Pilate. So remember, clothing is expensive, and royal clothing, splendid clothing, is really expensive. So this was a grand gesture. This was not just, hey, I'm sending a note. I didn't find him guilty. I think what Herod is saying is, I understand the situation, Pilate, that you are in, and I see you. I see your problem. I see that Jesus is innocent. Now, I agree with you. He's not Lord of the universe, but that's beside the point, that he is getting set up by these Jews, and I see that you are in a pickle, and so I'm going to send you back with this grand joke that I'm going to send him back to you as king of the Jews. So even though these guys had enmity before this, now they're going to kind of be friends because of what Herod does. He's signaling that he understands the position that he's in as a leader and judicator, even though justice is not going to be done. In fact, they all say that justice isn't going to be done. So it's interesting that the situation that Jesus is in brings out sympathy between these guys. So it does not lead to what we would love to see, personal belief, yielding that you are king in a personal way to me. But it does lead to friendship in the leaders, that Herod is saying to Pilate, you're in a pickle, you're in a tough situation. Of course, we're not going to do justice here because neither of us do that in our jobs probably very often. But I see you and that I understand you. So funny thing about this passage, ironic thing about this passage, is that the enmity brings understanding between these two leaders. Wow, who would expect that right in the middle of the second Roman trial? He comes back to Pilate for the third trial. Stick around. We'll see you tomorrow.